The following is an Operation Podcast production.
Human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth, like astrology, that gives you all this incredibly specific and juicy information about how you are wired to operate in every area of your life, from career to business to relationships to parenting. A couple things I think make it really distinct. One is that it's mystical. You know, you look at all these Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, all these things, and it's questionnaire based. And I don't know about you, but often when I'm answering those questions, it's based on who I think I should be, why I'm answering the questions. Like, it's so kind of circumstantial.
Or I could even take the same questionnaire based on my mood that day.
Totally.
I feel like I would have a totally different answer.
We're all making decisions every day, you know, from choosing who to have in your podcast to when to have a kid to, you know, which office to rent, whatever it is. Like, we're just choosing every day. And I think human design helps us move from a place of indecision or questioning to much clearer, confident decision making. And I do kind of think when we enter into the right things in the first place, everything in our life becomes easier. I'm Erin Claire Jones. Welcome to Ever Forward Radio.
How is this conversation, do you think, really going to directly help my audience move forward in their life?
I love that. Getting right to it, huh? I think that, you know, the magic of human design, and I hope this conversation is to really give you some hyper-personalized insight into how you're designed to do things better. You know, maybe you are struggling at business and like something's not working. Maybe you're having a miscommunication with your partner. Maybe you're struggling with one kid. I think hopefully there will be a gem that you can take away today that is like, oh, I could do this differently. I think so often we look at how others are doing things and assume that we should do it that way too. And I think human design is the most, you know, mechanical, straightforward way I've found to be like, this is how you are specifically wired to make decisions, to communicate, to structure your day-to-day. So I hope that listeners walk away with some gem that they can integrate into their own life and really consider a way of doing things that maybe is not what they expected, but actually feels far better for them.
I'll take it. I love that interpretation. Thank you so much for just jumping right in with me.
Yeah.
So for listeners who are new to human design, can you briefly, you know, kind of high level, because we're going to get into the weeds of it throughout the conversation here, explain what it is and how it differs from other things you kind of mentioned, you know, astrology, Myers-Briggs, how it differs from other personality systems.
Human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth, like astrology, that gives you all this incredibly specific and juicy information about how you are wired to operate in every area of your life, from career to business to relationships to parenting. A couple things I think make it really distinct. One is that it's mystical. You know, you look at all these Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, all these things, and it's questionnaire based. And I don't know about you, but often when I'm answering those questions, it's based on who I think I should be, why I'm answering the questions. Like, it's so kind of circumstantial.
Or I could even take the same questionnaire based on my mood that day.
Totally.
I feel like I would have a totally different answer.
Totally. And it's not to say they're not helpful. I actually think these systems are amazing, but it's a really different way of accessing it. And like, I remember doing a weekend workshop about the Enneagram. And I left being like, oh, I'm definitely a 3, but I was also like, but am I conditioned to be a 3? Like, am I actually a 3? Like, am I just trying to be a doer because I live in New York City and I live in the entrepreneurial scene? Like, I think that it felt hard to be like, but what's my nature? And I think so human design is actually very straightforward in that, like, it's based on your birth information. And like, I don't know about you, but like when I discovered my human design, nothing had ever resonated more. And yet I was living the opposite of it. So if I was to guess what my design was, I don't think I would have even allowed that to be an option.
That's pretty damn liberating.
So liberating. And so like that I think is really cool. And also I love working with teams where they're like, thank God it's just the birth information. Like, they don't have to do all these things. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. The other piece that I think is really interesting to me about human design is that it's incredibly practical. As mystical as it is, it also gives us so many like day-to-day tools to actually experience change in our lives. And that's exactly what this book is for. And I think that my experience with assessments before is I would find out all this really juicy information that was like incredibly fun to hear, but I left not knowing what to do with it. And I think with human design, I'm like, oh, I can make decisions this way. You know, like I need to sleep on things. Oh, I'm meant to be invited into things. Like, it just helped me really understand how to find and create opportunities, how to assess what was right for me, how to structure my day-to-days in a way that was more sustainable. And so I think that practicality piece is so useful.
A lot of people probably appreciate more the practicality portion of what we're talking about. And for anyone that is still here after thinking about checking out when they heard mystical, can you bring us back to really appreciate that aspect more, and to maybe, for someone that hears mystical or hears astrological or hears or interprets woo, get them to get on board a little bit. Just, pull on that thread a little bit to just entertain the idea.
Okay, here's what I'd say. 2 pieces. One is that what matters most to me is not whether human design is true, but whether it's useful. And so I think for those, and I start the book that way, it's like, of course, I would not be in this for so long if I didn't feel like it was like undeniably useful. And like it has been. But like, I think that's the question to enter with. Like, I'm never trying to convince people of anything. Like, if they don't resonate, that's fine. But my experience has been like, it just makes sense to people. And like, I would say I've worked with a lot of skeptics. I worked with a lot of companies. I remember working with a team at this healthcare startup. They were all men that were much older. They're like, team lead brought me in and they were all like, who is this woman? And why does she want our birth information? And they were so resistant. And yet I worked with them for a year.
Yeah.
And like, you could watch them slowly, like just be like, but how do you know that? Like, have you been following me around? Like they were just like, it kind of like, I just like started knocking at that. And like, eventually they were all like, I need to know about my partners, my kids, my teams. Like it was so interesting to watch them move from this place of extreme skepticism to a place of like, I can't deny that it's helping me. And so even though like the mystical origins don't make sense to me, it's useful. So like, I guess for those listening, just know that like, this is not the ultimate truth, but it is an amazing and very interesting framework to think about how you operate. And so whether or not you choose to subscribe to the type that is your birth information, listen, see where you resonate, and I have just seen it be so useful in people's lives, even to the most skeptical. They're the ones that tend to fall in love with it the most. And so if there's any part of you that is curious, I would keep listening.
Yeah.
Because like that's telling you something.
Yeah. If you can right now say yes to choosing to be curious and not necessarily saying yes to believing or jumping into what we're going to talk about, or really insert any other topic after choosing curiousness, then I think your life's going to change.
Totally.
It just gets you thinking outside of your norm and thinking differently. And the more we can think differently, then I think we see what could be for our life and for ourselves.
Yes.
And it might not be the thing, but it puts us on the path to the thing,
Totally.
So your book is titled, How Do You Choose? How does human design help people make better choices in their daily lives?
So the goal of the book was to really help people make empowered decisions in every part of their life. And I think the point of that is we're all making decisions every day. From choosing who to have in your podcast to when to have a kid to, which office to rent, whatever it is, like we're just choosing every day. And I think human design helps us move from a place of indecision or questioning to much clearer, confident decision-making. And I do kind of think when we enter into the right things in the first place, everything in our life becomes easier. Like, I know for me when I like don't know what to choose and then I say yes to a thing, and there's like a lot of questioning. And so basically human design is an amazing, you get that? Yeah.
Yes.
Human design just like, and I think it's waste our time, because we're like losing all the sleep of like, it's like, I think when we know how to actually choose, things just flow. And so I think human design helps us make decisions in so many ways, but one of those ways is helping us connect to kind of our own intuitive knowing. And so, for example, can I use you as an example?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Let me just take a quick peek. So if you don't know your human design, by the way, you can look it up at humandesignblueprint.com. It's going to give you a chart that doesn't make sense. So don't worry about that. But look at the qualities assigned next to it. There's a piece called our authority, which is how we connect to our intuition. You, Chase, are a sacral authority.
Sacral authority. Okay.
So I know language is weird. It means that you are meant to make decisions in the moment based on your gut feeling. It's a visceral feeling in your belly that will either push you towards or pull you away from something. This is not to say your mind's not going to do a whole dance around whether you should or should not do a thing, but your answer lies in kind of your visceral response. One of the best ways to access it is to ask you really specific questions. So often with my clients with a sacral authority, they'll kind of talk around a decision for, say, 10 minutes. And then I'll ask them, do you want to do that? And they say no. So like,
yes.
You know what I mean? So there's just like, there is this, it's again, it's not to like devalue the mind. The mind is amazing, but like my guess is that you can talk yourself in or out of anything, but your gut is actually your source of truth when it comes to what you actually have the energy for. And so when you feel indecisive, my guess is it's because you're just disconnected from your gut.
Absolutely. And my ability to talk myself in or out of anything is always 99% of the time based on what I'm trying to accommodate of others, not my own intuition or what I actually want or feel is in most alignment for my life.
Yes, exactly. And you're also somebody who's incredibly empathic according to your design. So is everybody with this authority. And so like you can't help but feel other people's feelings about a decision. So my guess is it's also easy to get swayed by their feelings and be like, oh, like I'm going to do this and just totally disconnect from your gut. And so that's why I love the specific questions because it kind of drills straight into it. My husband has this, and even like a simple example is like if I ask him what he wants to eat for dinner, it's like a blank stare. But I'm like, do you want to go here or here? He's like, absolutely there.
Yeah.
So like when you know how to position things, it kind of speaks to their truth. So I actually don't remember your question. But
it was
postpartum brain. What was the question?
You're in good company, new dad brain over here. It was, so your book is called How Do You Choose? How Does Human Design Help People Make Better Choices in Their Daily Lives? I know it's kind of a big question.
No, it's a great question. So like, I think that it helps you discover what is your own way of accessing your truth. And the other point, so again, that's the example. Other people like me, I've got to sleep on things. Some people have to kind of talk things out with good sounding boards and see what truth emerges. Other people need to give themselves a full month before they decide. But the goal of the book is to be like a real-time decision-making guide. I had a friend who had an advanced copy and she called me and she was like, Erin, like, I don't know whether or not we should move to this apartment in Brooklyn. And I was about to like go on a whole thing with her. And I was like, you have the freaking book, open to this chapter. And I was like,
gave you the blueprint.
As an experiment. Yeah. And she opened the chapter and 5 minutes later I got a text and she's like, I know exactly what to do. And it's not because the book was like, take the Brooklyn apartment. It was because the book reminded her how she was wired to choose. And once she was reminded of that, she knew exactly what to do. And so I think it's meant to serve in that way of like, how can you continue to choose in a way that really feels true to you?
So do you think, I just have to imagine someone listening right now is going, well, is it really learning how to better choose, like to get back to my like inner compass kind of thing? Or is it first a lot of unlearning? Do I need to kind of go, well, is this really what I want? Is this how I want to think? Or is this how I'm conditioned? Is this how I was raised? Is it nature? Is it nurture? How do we even know that yes or no inside is our yes or no?
Well, again, we all have different ways of accessing it. Like I think like I'll use myself as an example. My authority in human design, my way of choosing is to give myself time. It's to give myself a day, not like you, a day or 2 or 3 and basically see what stays true. For me, it's not about loving a thing in the moment, but loving it over time. The way that I was conditioned was to be very rash. So when I discovered this, it was a little bit shocking because I'm like, I'm so fast. And I was also like, and yet I regret almost every decision that I make. And so like, I know for me, the practice was to just start giving myself time and like see what felt true. And like, honestly, there's always an answer and the answer feels really peaceful. It doesn't feel exciting. It just feels peaceful. So I think that we are often conditioned to do things differently. And my encouragement is to just experiment with whatever your authority is and see how it feels. Because again, you might be conditioned in a lot of ways, but if you're asked a really specific question, my guess is your body's going to respond.
Yeah, it pretty much always for me is if I get a yes or a no, this or that, it's yes or no, it's this or that. Introduce ambiguity, introduce options, then my hypothetical head in the cloud kind of brain just goes on a field trip. And not to say that doesn't serve me because it kind of gets me thinking, different left brain, right brain kind of opportunities. But when it comes down to what do you need to do, what do you want to do, if it's just A, B all day, I can make every choice.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But I think it's just a reminder for us that like, I think that we make things a lot harder than they need to be simply because we don't understand. And human design, whether you believe it or not, does kind of offer us this manual. One of the stories I tell in my book, which I hope is a reminder of how powerful it is to not only understand your way of making decisions, but the people around you, is about a couple, and they were considering whether or not to move to New York City. And one of them had an authority like yours. She knew in the moment. She like knew they were meant to move to New York City. But she came to me in a moment of like wild frustration because she's like, but my husband's waffling. Like every day is something different. Like I'm just like so annoyed. And when I looked at his way of making decisions, I was like, he's meant to give himself a full month before he chooses. So what she perceived as waffling was his process, his way of 100%. And so like, yeah, he's sampling all the possibilities and then ultimately lands in his truth. And so they were experiencing all this friction, not because he was choosing incorrectly, not because she was choosing too fast, but just because they were different and they didn't understand. And I guess that feels like pretty universal to all of human design. Like things are hard because we don't understand. And human design is like, this is how you're wired to operate. See how it works, And like, I know for me, there have been many parts of my design that I've been very resistant to. Waiting for decisions is incredibly annoying. I'm like, I want to decide today. And yet I have enough life experience to know now that when I rush, it gets so much messier. I cause chaos for my husband, for sure. For me, it's so hard to pull myself out of it. So like, I know giving myself a couple days at the beginning makes life so much easier going forward.
That's it. I think what everybody is after. If you can just learn how to make the best choice for you and understanding that your timeline is your timeline, that introduces a level of grace and permission that just, I think we're all looking for.
I know. Again,
We're all looking for
I
it.
think it allows us to be in the experience so much more because we just like, we're choosing what's right. And even I was on a podcast earlier today with one of your amazing hosts, and she was like, what's next? You know, what's after the book? And it's funny because human design has very much taught me that like, I don't really know what's going to feel right until it's there. And I was like, I have no idea what's after the book. Like my daughters, you know, like, but it was so like, I feel like there's another version of myself that would be like, I want this and I want this. And like, I do want all the things, but I also like have found that my decision-making has guided me in the most unexpected directions that I could never have imagined and have been way cooler than any plan I could have made. And so my only job is to just keep choosing in the way that's right. And like, I can dream, but I also like, I'm not going to know until I know.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So I know a big part of this new work around human design is for and about relationships. So how can understanding your human design type improve communication and connection in romantic relationships?
Oh my gosh. In all the ways, you know, I think that, again, like I said, there's so much friction I experience when I sit with couples, not because there's a fundamental disconnect, because they just don't get each other. You know, I tell another story in the book of a projector and manifesting generator. These are two opposite types. Projectors are like natural leaders and guides and teachers and not consistent doers. And manifesting generators like you are like the ultimate doers, you know, incredibly multi-passionate, like so much capacity. And when she came to me, she was like, I don't know whether I should be with him because like he does everything and I actually feel like I just can't keep up. And like it was very much leading to a questioning of their relationship because they were so different, you know. And she's like, I don't know if I'm contributing enough. And it ended up kind of being this conversation, but it was so amazing because she was like, oh, like we don't have to be the same. The fact that he's so energetic and so capable and does so many things is like amazing for him and amazing for me. But like me trying to keep up and be the same as him is benefiting nobody. And for him, he was like, this woman is the wisest person I've ever met. She's guided every decision that I've made. Like she doesn't have to show up for everything, but like when she shows up, it transforms everything around her. And so like there had been all this challenge simply because they didn't appreciate how different they were. So I think our relationships, and I'm married to somebody whose design is opposite mine in every single way. And so like, and now my daughters are opposite mine in every single way. And so like, I think it brings so much compassion and understanding into like, how does this person work best, you know? And like to give some specific examples, you know, with my husband and I'm a projector in human design. He's a generator. Like I've learned to ask him really specific questions. That's really shifted our communication. He has learned about me that like words of affirmation are my favorite thing in the world. So really recognizing me, inviting me to share, inviting me to do things with him makes a big difference. You know, one thing he's also learned about me is that I need a lot of rest and time alone. And, you know, that's not always super easy with young kids, but really like asking for that without guilt and him supporting me. And that has made such a big difference. So it's just like, it's honestly pretty endless. You know, I think of another couple that I sat with in session and they were also really struggling. And we looked at a part of their designs that revealed one of them like processed things best on his own. And the other one needed to talk things out. And so they were really struggling because they would need to figure things out. And he'd be like, I need to go have space. And she's like, I want to talk it all through. And like, again, this was not about them being wrong for each other. It was about the fact that like their needs were different. He was independent and she was more collaborative. So there are just like so many layers of like dynamics that when we understand like they're just our differences, I think it helps us become so much closer to each other.
We'll stick with the romantic relationship aspect for now. Is it more beneficial for one partner to focus more on how the other person best operates to make that relationship better? Or should they first focus on themselves to figure out how they need to best show up and operate in the relationship?
I would start with themselves. So I would start with you because again, if you're out of alignment, it's probably not going to like make, you know, things will be hard. I think that like I would start with yourself and then I would learn about the people in your life. You know, like I think that like my biggest dream for this book is that people not only read the chapters about themselves, but they read the chapters about their kids and their partners and their friends. Because I will say like I wrote the book and yet still whenever I read the chapter about generators and relationships, I realize like a way that I could support my husband better. Whenever I read about manifestors, I'm like, oh my God, of course my 7-month-old did it this way. Like there's just like, it really is so helpful in understanding the people we love. So that is the ultimate goal, but I would definitely start with you.
Okay. It kind of reminds me of the 5 love languages. And I think I even referenced this on our first podcast. When May, my wife and I read that, we were, I think, year 2 of dating, right before we got engaged, it showed me how I learned a lot about myself, but honestly, it helped me better understand her needs more so, and in turn, helped me better understand how I needed to show up, not like to act for her directly, but how to act out of my genuine center and authentic place in a way that I knew that she was going to be receptive of that, but also every other person in my life. It's not just romantic love. It's how well does this person, at work? Do I need to compliment them on their work, or insert anything else here? How are they going to receive it, basically?
Exactly. And it really changes the game. And it's really easy, like the love languages, to be like, oh, this is the way that I receive. I assume they're going to receive it the same way. Like, I know for me as a projector, words of affirmation are like the way to my heart. And so I assume others will want it. And I give my husband that. He's like, I don't need that. Whereas like for generators, like acts of service or like giving them more space to do what they love is going to make the biggest difference for them. And so like, it is just so easy. I mean, this is like concept can be globalized to everything, but like to assume that our way is the way. And like, this is so true in business. I can't tell you how many clients I've had who come to me that are like, oh, like I hired this business coach and like I put their strategy into action and it didn't actually work for me. And it's like, because they're wired differently, So I just think
Even in the same business.
Even in the same business, because they're just like, it's going to work differently for them. And so I think there's something really powerful about understanding those differences.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah.
Are there particular types or combinations of types that are more naturally compatible, or is it more about understanding and honoring each other's design?
Did we look up Made by the Way?
No.
We never did, right?
No,
we
actually,
got
no.
to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think every teacher and educator will have their own approach to this. I think my belief is that human design doesn't tell us who we can or cannot be with, or even what we can do for a career. It lets us know how we can best be with the people that we choose.
Ooh, I like that.
Because I think that like once somebody feels right, I think that's the time to be like, okay, let me like look at your design and see how I can best support you and have a conversation about it. I think that people have been like, you should build an app and then you like find the people. And I'm like, to me, that just like doesn't actually make sense, because it's like, some relationships might be harder than others. Some might require more work. It doesn't make them the wrong ones. I think often there's a lot of attraction to difference. I know for me, a lot of my friends have a similar design to me. Like I have a lot of projector friends and I feel like there's like a home kind of feeling with them. But I also I think part of why my husband and I like end up building so many things together is because we are so different. So to me, it's a matter of just taking the time to understand how different people are instead of choosing people that are more similar or different.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay. So still in kind of the relationships umbrella here, can human design help resolve recurring conflicts or patterns in relationships? And if so, how?
Yeah. For sure. Like, again, these are like such specific, like, let me give you a specific example that is true in my relationship and might be true for you too. So, one pattern is, okay, so I don't know your partner's design, but according to your design, you're incredibly empathic. Like you're really sensitive to other people's feelings and are really attuned.
And so is she.
So you guys might be the same in this way.
Even more so, yeah.
So my husband is the same. He's like wide open, incredibly sensitive. It's not that I'm not empathic, but it's more that my emotions like pour out of me. My emotions really impact my environment. And I have these like big emotional waves that are often inexplicable, but it's just like highs and lows. Like that's just part of my like life. And I feel like we used to have a version where like, because he was so attuned to me, like we would kind of get lost in this thing where I was in a low and he's like, what's going on? And we would kind of get stuck there. And I think what my design reminded us of is that like the highs and lows are actually pretty natural. And like, because he's so sensitive, the best thing for him to do in those moments is to give me space and to meet me on the other side. So it's like, be in your low, be in the melancholic state, make art, do whatever you want to do. I'm waiting for you on the other side. Whereas I think another version would be like, what's wrong? Why is it happening? What's going wrong in our relationship?
Yeah.
Like when it wasn't really about us at all. It was just like, I was just like in a mood.
Which I think is the natural tendency for a lot of people in relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, out of a genuine place of caring and wanting to help and support the other person, but to the detriment.
Totally. Exactly. And like, and actually probably not what they need. And you can imagine how much this applies to parenting, and so like that really made a difference in our relationship. And also like I learned in my design as somebody who needs time to feel into things is that like clarity comes with time. So like if we're in a really like emotionally heightened state or a fight or something like that, like I'm very prone to like saying a thing and then like disagreeing with it 5 minutes later, you know? And so like I learned that like probably not the right time to make dramatic statements. You know, like I tell a story in the book of somebody who shared this part of her design. And she said that she often like in the throes of her emotion would end a relationship or would like make this dramatic decision.
It's
and
like
then
ultimatum, right?
yeah,
here.
just like I'm done. And then she'd be like, oh, I have to like walk back from that. And then, but like for her, it was like such a discovery to be like not choosing from an emotional place, giving herself time to get there. And so like, you know, that is true in both small and big moments.
Yeah. In your experience or like working with people or just in like your work of human design, have you ever come to the realization that like, oh, these people are so different, it makes you so incompatible, or does it just give them more things to work on?
I think it's more things to work on. I think there's one relationship I think of that, and it wasn't about a tight thing or anything like that. It was just around the fact that like, and this is like a pretty technical part of human design, is that like their charts weren't really held very tightly together. Like it was just like there was so much space. And so like it would just require a lot more effort to come together. And it was interesting talking to them because like, you know, I obviously had to be smart about how I position that. But like they were like, oh yeah, we're just like passing ships in the night. Like we just barely see each other. And like in a moment like that, it's like, it's not that they can't do it. It's just like it's going to require more work for them to be like, we're really going to blend.
They have to choose to want to work on it,
yes.
right? It's even beyond the realization of, oh, you're this type, I'm this type. If you still choose to want to work on it, like it is possible.
Of course. Okay. I would never see two people and be like, you're doomed. You know, it's more just like, oh, like these might be trigger points. This might be hard. And like, honestly, it's often really helpful for people to hear that because they're like, yeah,
okay, those
are trigger points. We're already experiencing them. Now we just have a way to move through them more gracefully.
Which is great. I mean, if you know that the waters before you are tumultuous and very challenging, and but if you have a map to know how to navigate them, or even just to know what to expect rather than being caught off guard all the time, then you probably have a lot more faith in your ability to navigate that.
Yeah. And you also kind of like depersonalize it.
Right.
Where it's not just this moment of like, you are choosing too quickly or whatever. It's just like, oh, this is one of those moments where like I want to decide really fast and you need more time. What practice can we have in place to make sure both of our processes are honored? You know, or like one that I see often for people is like, there are some people that are super open-minded. They're like meant to kind of entertain every possibility and like they just see the nuances in a way that most people don't. And then there are other people that are like just more fixed and certain. They just like have a perspective and way of seeing things. I often see a lot of friction in these dynamics in relationships because the person who's more certain is like, why does this person not have an opinion?
Yes.
And the person who's more open-minded is like, why don't you see every possibility? And like, you can imagine how frustrating that is. But like, the ultimate truth is these people are the best allies because the person who's more certain can go to that person and be like, show me another way, show me another possibility. Like it's not my default to see it, but you do. And so I think that like, again, that's just a reframe. It's like, it just requires to like, you guys are different. How can you see things differently?
So I know a lot of this is probably going to be, I know for sure it's in your book, but we haven't like really specifically explained human design. Can you walk us through, what is it? You know, we've been saying this as an application or tool to navigate relationships thus far, but what is the human design process? How do I figure it out? Like, what's the baseline here?
So to look up your human design, you can go to humandesignblueprint.com. You'll need your time, date, and place of birth. If you don't know your exact time, use the closest approximate you know. The location is simply for time zone. So if you like don't know the precise town, choose somewhere that shares a time zone.
Okay.
You'll look it up, see a crazy looking thing. And basically it gives you all this really interesting information around like your type, which is basically around how you best use your energy, your strategy, which is basically around how you can like find and create opportunities, your authority, which is how you make decisions. It's pretty endless in the information it can offer, but at the highest level, there are 5 different types in human design: manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, and manifestors.
And what is this fundamentally based off of?
So human design draws from a lot of different systems: astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, the chakra system. But the honest answer is the origins are really mystical. So if you stayed with us this far and you're skeptical, I might lose you now. But human design has been around since
Go put on your beads if you got them.
Yeah, just maybe just take a pee break right now. It's been around since 1987. The founder, who's no longer alive, was a man named Ra Uhuru, who I tell this story in the book. And he was living in Ibiza and he had a really mystical experience where he was walking home one night and heard a voice. Have I told you this story before?
No.
And the voice basically said it's time to work. And for 8 days and 8 nights, he channeled the system, meaning that he just received all this information. And then he spent the next 20 years building it out.
Was he meditating, or how was he channeling all of this?
He was not, he was just literally like at a desk for 8 days and 8 nights receiving all of it.
Wow.
Whether he was on drugs, we don't know.
Just downloading something somehow.
Yes.
Okay.
In a way that like it feels like impossible to even comprehend, and that's how it all started. He kind of, it was very fringe, I think for good reason, it makes sense. And then it kind of just started reaching and just really resonating with people in a much bigger way. So
well, in some religions here, we would call this, a direct connection and experience with, the Spirit,
Yes.
the Holy Spirit. I go back to my Christianity upbringing, but that's, I'm kind of relating that.
Yeah. Well, it's how a lot of things have come about, as wild as it is, and like, it's also funny, like Ra Uhuru, before he was Ra, he was Alan, he's an advertising executive. Like, it's just also interesting. It's like, I feel like he was actually very unexpected, or like somebody I wouldn't expect to be the recipient of this information. Like, I remember when I first started listening to recordings back in 2015, I was like ready for my like, just like spiritual teacher. And then like this like very sarcastic dude just like starts talking, and I'm like, this was like not the teacher that I expected. And he had a very unique way of sharing human design, but that's how it all began.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
But like, honestly, the like level of precision and all the things human design goes into is like, so I'm just like, still don't like comprehend it, and some people will be like, it's a science, which like, it's not proven, it's a mystical system, but there's a part of me that also has released the need to make it make sense. Which
can be very refreshing, and I think a lot of people can benefit from.
Yeah.
If you can get to that point of just like letting go a little bit.
Right. And like not everyone can do that or wants to do that. But I think for me, I'm like the information itself is helpful, and that's enough for me.
Have you ever found human design to conflict with anything else that people might be pursuing to find their truth or make life make sense? Like getting an astrological reading, like Myers-Briggs, like Enneagram. Does one kind of outdo the other, so to speak? Or do we get conflicting pieces of information?
Like I have actually never found that they've conflicted. Like I've co-hosted retreats with astrologers and Enneagram experts, and like I just feel like they're like this really nice blend, and I've done sessions with so many astrologers. I just did a podcast with one, and like human design just like offers her a different thing than astrology does. So I've never seen them like battling, I've seen them all kind of offer different information. And like, I think that sometimes there are these conflicts or juxtapositions even within human design. Like, for example, I'm going to use you as an example again. You are somebody, there's a part of you that like is such a community person. Like you need high quality relationships. Like your community creates opportunity for you. Like you're just like a warm people person, like probably makes you really good at what you do. So like community is so important. And you're probably really good at bringing people together. There's another part of you that like just loves observing. That just like is so good at like sitting back and just like witnessing things and watching things. And like these are different things. Like the example that I love so much, I've heard this from 2 separate clients with this profile, is they've organized book clubs. They like brought all the people together. Like that was them in their role. And then once the people came together, they wanted to sit back and just watch it all. And like people expected them to host, and they were like, no, I want to be like in the witnessing seat. And so like you can see those are 2 seemingly different things that are both part of somebody.
Yeah.
And so I think I love human design because I'm like, things conflict because we are complex and we have different parts of ourselves that need balance. So like for you, like you need to be in it and you need to be out of it.
That's so interesting. Actually, to keep using me as an example here, I've struggled with that over the years as I kind of was working on, really kind of once I left my job and I began to do my own thing, by happenstance or by choice, a little bit combination of both, I realized I was building this community, and I was realizing I'm bringing all these people together. And also kind of the nature of what I chose to do, podcasting, is a lot of like connection, a lot of like networking, a lot of like referrals, and a lot of like bringing people together for like meaningful experiences and conversations. And the struggle part was like kind of thinking or assuming that I had to do something with that of, oh, Chase, if you're the one bringing all these people together, if you're one making this community, like, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
It's on you. But then realizing, and actually where I've had a lot of relief recently and also seeing a lot of growth, is just stepping back from that And also it really does feel so in alignment of what I prefer to do, of just knowing that that's existing and then just letting them do their thing and just observing. Like a big part of what I thrive off of is observing others in a place, in a space, in a container, somehow, some way, of just like watching the magic, not necessarily needing to be the one like conducting the magic.
Right.
Which is so like, oh my God, it feels so much better. It feels so much better.
I think this is just a really good example that I think why people resonate with human design is because it tends to feel very familiar. It gives us language for things that we already know, but you probably never would have been like, I'm this like community person, but I have to be this observer. Like you probably would not have thought to like frame it that way, even though like that was your life experience. And so like, that's why I think the people that are most skeptical tend to resonate, because they're like, you're giving me language for things I already know, but I've never been able to put into words. And like, that's what human design does. It doesn't feel like this foreign concept. It's just like, oh, thanks for articulating that, you know?
Right. Yeah. Thank you for putting it into words that I was struggling for.
Yeah. And now that I can use to express to other people what I need and who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most fundamental aspect, I think, of learning in the human experience in general.
Yeah.
It's like we're struggling with getting to a place in our life, you know, especially in relationships here, to, you know, go like, yes, that's what I meant, or like, this is the language for it, or I'm struggling to convey this, communicate this, because I don't know how to say it, or I don't know how to really kind of articulate it, or even just wrap it into a more qualitative state, just wrap it into a feeling and you know, and put it in a place or words that the other person can fully feel or understand.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think it's really powerful. I think what it does is it just gives us language for these things. And that was my experience getting my first human design reading, is I was like, this stranger is putting language to my inner workings in a way I never would have thought to do. But like, now I really feel so much permission to own that and step into it, because like it's been articulated.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's in a relationship and only one of the people are leaning into human design and the other person is like, it's not for me, or even going further and going like, you're out of your mind, you know? Is that going to be something that they can navigate together, or is that going to be a problem?
Totally. I think that like, you know, you can't force somebody into it, of course. And like, you know, I have many clients who just like desperately want their partners to be into it, and like they're just not into it. And that's perfectly fine. I think again, it's how you start with yourself. And my experiences, and I love this, I remember sitting with a client years ago who loved human design, and her partner was so not into it. And like, it was hard because she was like, I want to study human design, I'm so into it. And then it was like a year or two into it, he like came to her and he's like, okay, fine. And why he said it is he's like, you're different.
Yeah.
Like the way that you're showing up is different. And like, it feels like it's working for you. So like, I'm curious to know more. And so like, that was the perfect moment for her to share, you know, but like it didn't make sense before then. But I don't think it's at all required that both people are into it. I mean, I do plenty of couple sessions. I remember doing another couple session. And again, not everyone's going to be into it, but I did this couple session and the woman was like, it was anyway, she loved human design. I'd done many sessions with her, and her husband was there, and you could tell like him coming in as he was just like, I don't want to do this. And like, the more we started talking, he's like, I'm obsessed with this. And I ended up sitting with him like every other week for 6 months. Like he was so into it, but like, again, that's not always going to happen that way. But like, it was actually a really cool experience because his design is so much around, you can't, like he has to experience things for himself. And so where he was struggling as his wife was basically like, you have to believe this thing. And he's like, no. And then when like she gave him the experience of sitting with it and hearing it, he was like, oh, I actually really like this. And so like, that was actually a lesson for her, is like, he's not going to believe it until he tries it for himself. And so I just have to give him the space to try it for himself. Yeah. So our design can help us in that way. But I don't think it's a problem if not everyone's into it, because not everyone's going to be into it.
And I'll just say, usually my wife's pretty much always right about everything anyway. So I've learned to just speed up the acceptance process a little bit. Totally. I'm kidding a little bit, but you know, so let's say we're not already in a relationship. How can we use human design to maybe attract, dare I even say manifest, the ideal relationship, the ideal partner?
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a part of our design called strategy, because it really speaks to how we create opportunities. So while we'll focus the examples on relationships, this also will apply to work and all the things. So for generators and manifesting generators, again, look it up at humandesignblueprint.com. Their strategy is about waiting to respond. You are somebody, I'm going to use you as an example. You're somebody who's honestly just meant to like see what shows up in your world and what naturally sparks your gut feeling in ways that are really unexpected. You might be like, this person doesn't check any of the boxes yet feels right. This opportunity is so not what I envisioned for my career, and yet I must pursue it. I would say a really proactive thing you can do is around how you spend your days. When you use your energy in ways that feel deeply satisfying, whether it's what you're working on or who you're spending time with, you are the most magnetic. And so like I sat with so many clients that are like, I can't find anybody. I'm like, how do you feel about their work? They're like, awful, and then they like kind of start to create more time to do a thing that actually feels right. And they're like, oh, like people are showing up. Opportunities are showing up. So for generators and manifesting generators, pay attention to who shows up in your world and where you have kind of a visceral gut pull.
Okay.
How did you meet May?
Very much how you described.
Yeah.
I've always been one that like I don't really have a type, but it's just when I know it when I see it.
Yeah.
We met through at a party through my brother actually, and it was just like it was.
Oh my God! And you're meant to meet people through your community, by the way.
I was what?
You're meant to meet people through your community. Like
Well,
dating apps are not for you.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. We met through my brother, and it was just I never would have I never would have sought that kind of type out probably on my own. But yeah, it was like a warm introduction, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just one of those things like, oh, this is absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Isn't that so funny? I'm thinking back to how I met my husband because it's like let me talk about my way of meeting people and then I'll combine them. But like projectors in human design, their strategy is to wait to be invited. So you're here to like wait for somebody to be like you. It's not about like waiting to respond to your environment. It's like somebody very clearly and distinctly recognizing you. For me, what that's looked like in relationships is having people that like ask a lot of questions, like really invite me to take up space, really like make me feel seen in a way where I'm like, oh, they get me. And I actually really struggled with dating because I felt like I was like, there wasn't a level of depth that I could like resonate with. And I felt like I was always the one asking questions because like that's kind of my default mode. And like it was just kind of the opposite of my design. But I think back to my partner, we met when I was 23. We didn't start dating until 4 years later. But I was working at a company in New York City. He had a company. He came to our office. We ended up collaborating. And then he reached out for coffee and then ended up hiring me. So like it feels like that was that experience of like him kind of waiting for that response of like, I want her to do what she's doing for that company for me. And he really invited me in and like, and then he made me feel like the most seen ever. And like it slowly became a thing. But like when I think back career-wise, the biggest opportunities in my life, they've all come from an invitation. I met a stranger who read my human design chart and told me I should study human design and invited me to study with him. Totally cosmic and weird. A couple years later, like I hosted a retreat and I met somebody there who invited me to coffee and asked me to help open this co-working space in New York City. Like that's how things emerge for me. And so knowing that allows me to lean into it more. Okay, other strategies, manifestors in human design, they're here to initiate. So when it comes to meeting people, like if you have an urge, like a thing that you want, you're meant to just make the first move. And I've sat with so many—
Guy or girl?
Either. I've sat with so many women specifically who really felt discouraged from making the first move. Like even one was working with a dating coach and her coach was like, sit back and wait. It wasn't working for her.
Well, that's what I'm definitely out of the dating game. It's been a while, but like I feel like a lot of women probably hear or told by friends, families, even other girlfriends, like don't make the first move, right?
Yeah. And yet these people are meant to.
And then for some, that's going against your nature.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because often I've sat with those people and then they kind of recall important relationships and they're like, oh my God, like on a whim, I like initiated and like this thing emerged from that. And so like, yeah, they're meant to make the first move. It doesn't mean that rejection won't happen. That happens for all of us. But it's around the fact that like if you feel an urge, like let somebody know what you want. Like you don't have to initiate every step once you're in there, but like how things best start is making the first move.
That's the thing here, really. It's not just a whim. It's like your true nature.
It's real. It's true.
Wow.
The final type is a reflector. Their strategy is around waiting a lunar cycle. But I would say when it comes to meeting people, it's actually all about being in the right space. For them, opportunities emerge romantically and professionally when they're in spaces that feel good, when they're living in a city that feels good, a cafe that feels good, like going on a date and they like move to the table that they like, going to a hotel and like switching if they don't like it. Like curating their space gives them the best experiences. I tell a story in the book, which is not romantic, but professional. This woman really wanted to work for an NGO. And she was a server at a wine bar at the time. And basically this woman came in, a patron, and started like asking her questions about her aspirations. Like it was just kind of a casual conversation. And she started sharing her dreams of working at an NGO. And the woman ran an NGO at the UN, ended up hiring her. She worked there for 7 years after. But like when she looked back, without even trying, all of her opportunities came from like being in a space that felt good and just being open to like anything that would arise.
Wow.
I know.
You know, it's funny you say that, because when I think back to, you asked me earlier, how did I meet May? All the circumstances leading up to that was kind of like what you were just talking about, was me choosing that entire, honestly, that whole week, those last few months leading up to that was like the first time in years I had ever really cultivated these environments that made me feel my most authentic self and made me feel alive and plugged into the right community. I was having such friction leading up to that point of finding, being in, or feeling like I was even allowed to be in these certain groups, and just, you know, finding my people. But the more that I did that, you know, I was around the people that I love the most, doing the things that I love the most, spending my day how I love the most, in every way possible. So you take all of that, compound it over a couple months, like it kind of is like, no shit, you wound up being at the right place at the right time, in the right mood, in the right headspace, you know, having your heart and your mind open to this person, because you had been doing all the things compounding up leading up to that.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. But
I think there's something really nice around knowing our strategy in that way, because it allows us to be more proactive. Like you were doing it maybe unconsciously. And that's like, oh, how can I more consciously find my way into the next thing?
Yeah.
Not romantically, but in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I've had a few guests on recently talking about, you know, manifestation and different approaches to it, but I'm hearing a lot of similarities in it, which call it whatever you want. But I think if we all choose to just go, I'm going to at least entertain the idea that I'm going to think about this dream life.
Yeah.
Get rid of dream, ideal. Like just what do you want? What feels the most right for you, especially when we're talking about a partner.
Yeah.
Like we all deserve that.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I'll even say it's up to us to cultivate that.
Yeah.
And we can't cultivate that. And we can't call in, we can't allow, or even once we get it, we might not even feel like we can keep it if we don't get ourselves into the headspace of who am I? What do I want? What exactly do I want my day to look like? Like there's a lot of everything waiting for us if we can just get on the other side of that.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also human design is a really cool tool to kind of get unstuck in that way too.
Absolutely.
To kind of just be like, another example would be like, say I sit with a generator who's at a job they don't enjoy, and like nothing is coming. They're here to respond and nothing's coming. It's like, it's hard to attract aligned things when they're kind of spending so much of their energy and I think that they don't enjoy. And for them, my biggest advice is not quit your job, because that's probably not feasible. Maybe it is, but it's more, how can you carve out an hour a week where you do a thing that you love just because? And like, how can you remember what true satisfaction feels like? And like, when you do that, you take this small step towards attracting more aligned things your way. So there are these small ways that we can just like make ourselves available for a thing that is better.
What do you think is a small way most people are not doing to not allow themselves to really shine through, or a small way most people are? How can I say this?
I have an interpretation.
Okay, go for it. My brain dad brain is on his way out.
I know, honestly, okay. Like,
are you understanding? Like,
I think I get it. Like, what is a way that people are often holding themselves back?
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm going to do it by type though.
Okay.
Because whenever I try to generalize, it's impossible in human design. So like, I would say projectors in human design. Again, if you haven't looked up your type, you can also listen and see where you fall. Projectors, like, we just are so susceptible to overdoing. You know, we are not here to be these consistent doers with all this stamina, and yet we're in a world of a lot of doers and we try to keep up. I have found when I do that, it's just diminishing returns. You know, I've learned the more rested I am, the more effective I am, the more efficient I am, the more creative I am. So feeling guilty about rest, not giving ourselves permission to actually rest, really holds us back. And also like, sorry, I will end this one quickly. I also feel like I used to even feel like rest had to be productive. It was like, what podcast can I listen to? What course can I take? Like, what laundry can I fold? So like,
some kind of passive learning, passive doing.
Totally. And it's like, how can you give yourself permission to be unproductive? That is the goal. So like, I feel like actually that is often a pathway to like allowing a lot more in as a projector. I think a way that generators and manifesting generators can hold themselves back is if they deprioritize their own satisfaction.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is generators and manifesting generators are incredibly capable, very natural doers. However, the more lit up they are, the more energy they have, the more they light up everybody around them. And yet because they're so capable, they end up kind of becoming a martyr for everyone else's needs.
Oh my God,
and like,
yes.
Saying yes out of obligation or desire to please. And all of a sudden their energy is all being funneled into that. And their passions are totally like by the wayside. And so like, this is not to say every moment of your day you have to be 100% lit up by, but like the more satisfied you are, the more energy you have to do everything else. But they kind of end up just like, letting everyone else's needs, go on the front burner. So carving out some space, especially as a dad, to kind of do the things that bring you joy is going to give you so much more energy at home.
Yeah.
But that extends to everything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Very much.
I would say how manifestors tend to hold themselves back. Two pieces. One is not making the first move, feeling like things must come to them. And then they kind of don't trust these like really amazing visions that are bubbling up and they don't have the courage to pursue them. I would say rest is another one for manifestors. Like they need a lot of time alone, and time alone is often where new ideas come. And so they don't give themselves permission to rest, to stop, to take time alone. In many ways, they become unavailable to like new ideas and inspirations that are waiting to bubble up. So that is kind of the pathway to the new thing for them. And I would say reflectors, what probably holds them back is convincing themselves to continue to spend time in spaces and around people that don't feel right. These people amplify the energy that they're around. And so like they have to be ruthless about curating where they spend time, who they spend time, and know that like it will evolve. Like a community that once felt right might change. An office that once felt right might start feeling stagnant. So kind of like convincing themselves to stay or to be in a space, like to walk into a party and be like, it doesn't feel right, but I'm going to stay. Like the right spaces lead to the right experiences. They might as well like be proactive about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to kind of contain this conversation around, I know a lot of the book also talks about, the professional world and entrepreneurship and career, but I want to kind of just keep the container around relationships here for this sake. But I do want to ask, in writing a book, and I'm always curious with authors, in writing the book, you go in to learn about and to write about a specific topic, your area of expertise or interest. How did researching this book, how did writing this book challenge any beliefs you had around the topic, around human design, or even your own human design? Like what new information was kind of brought up and maybe was challenging for you in this book?
Well, I would say probably, and this doesn't totally answer the question, but I would say probably one of the hardest parts of this process was what to include. I wrote 150 pages that never they're not in the book at all.
Why did they make the cut?
Because I had to choose. I think that like I'm sitting here having studied human design for 10 years. I feel like people need to know everything. They need to know about this about their chart and this about their chart. And like, yes, and if I actually want this book to be accessible to the biggest audience possible, like I can't overwhelm them with information. I can't have my first book be 300 pages. Like that might be good for some people. Like for me, that wasn't.
If you're writing a textbook, which to your point at the beginning is kind of like the only thing that exists about this
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
Like I'm looking for a different book and I had to make really hard choices. So like I would say personally as an author, that was the hardest part. Not even like writing the 150 pages, but more like, God, I want them to know everything. And yet like the question for me is like, what are the pieces that are the most actionable, the most empowering that they can use right now? Because there are ways for them to go deeper. We have 1,000 offerings around that. Like it's more like, I think just having to choose and feeling like I can't teach them everything right now. And that's not the point. I think what has changed for me in my experience of human design is that I feel like I tell the story of human design now through stories. Like I feel like the language I use to describe it has changed. It just feels like I was so immersed in like, how does this actually show up in people's lives that like the way that I talk about it is so different. I don't think I really anticipated that because like I spent a year writing it, not going on podcasts, like just kind of being in the journey. And now being on all these podcasts pre-book, I'm just like, wow, this is like the way I talk about human design is so different than it was 2 years ago. And I kind of had to be in the experiential moment of not like reading textbooks and not teaching, but more just like learning from people's lives that I think makes the way that I talk about it more interesting.
So what did you leave hanging for us, maybe for the next book, or, where do we go after we're done with this new piece of work?
So I think that, one of our offerings, our kind of primary offering is just these hyper-personalized guides all about you. And so that's like a beautiful place to go. It's at humandesignblueprint.com. We have a discount code, which maybe is ever. I'm going to create ever.
Oh, can we do ever forward?
We're going to do ever forward. It might already
okay.
exist. Anyways, if it doesn't, it will. The discount code is ever forward. Like that's a really beautiful place. But even if somebody already has their guide and maybe they got it after our last podcast, the book still offers information you haven't found anywhere else because it's around how you can actually use it.
Okay.
So like I'm kind of finding all these things just tend to support each other. But just know that like the book is an amazing starting point and there's an endless world awaiting you on the other side. But like you might not need to know that world. I think another lesson for me is like most people don't want to learn human design. Most people want to know what they need to know about the system that will help them live their best life, And the book is for that. I have plenty of offerings to serve the latter. And like,
so it's a book about human design for people that don't want to know human design.
It's a book for people that want to know how to actually use it. Like I had somebody who got an advanced copy because she's a librarian and she's taken every single course that I've offered. Like for the past 4 years, she offers human design readings. In a moment like that, I'm like, will the book offer anything? And she's like, I can't tell you how much I learned.
Wow.
So like, because for her, it was told through story. It was told through experience. It was told through practical examples. So like, it was so cool for me to hear that. So like, I actually I know that nothing's for everybody, but like when I think about human design curious to human design expert, like the book I think is different, is will serve both in different ways.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I get to my last question, I'm curious in your personal experience and now professional application of human design, has this, for lack of a better term, curriculum changed at all? Or is that kind of the appeal of human design is it is what it is, what it is. There's no need for it to actually evolve.
The fundamentals are the same. It's like the mechanics of people's designs or how it's described, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it's always changing. When I discovered human design, it was super fringe. No one was talking about it and people were talking about it in a really specific way, in a really kind of dogmatic way. And I feel like the farther I've gone into the system, the less dogmatic I've become. Like I used to be like, you are this. And now I'm like, your human design says this. How does that feel? And so like, I would say I wouldn't say the information has necessarily changed, but I know that my way of expressing it definitely has, because like, I think that it's a little bit intense and alienating to have somebody tell you a thing instead of offering it as an option and then you choose how it feels.
Yeah, which I think is where maybe a lot of people get a bad taste in their mouth about any of these things we talked about. They get an astrological reading, they take a personality test, any kind of questionnaire. It's just like some other person, some other forum, some other governing body telling them who they are, how they need to act, or, what makes them up. But instead we can just get a better understanding so that we can ask better questions to lead us to find our own answers.
That's right.
Well, I don't remember if I asked you this on our last interview. I didn't know if I had this part of the show in 2019 or not, but the whole point of Ever Forward Radio is to bring people on to kind of introduce or remind us of unique areas of life, of well-being, to help us move forward in that area, and then collectively to live a life ever forward. So, Erin, those two words, what do they mean to you? Ever forward.
I think it's like such a great reminder that like we can always start. It's like when I discovered my design, I was not operating like a projector, but like I could start. Like there are moments now where it's like, oh, I'm like, haven't done this. And it's like, but I can always start. Like, I mean, we're so lucky to be alive and have this moment, but I think it's just a constant reminder that like, there's always a chance to begin something new. There's always a chance to evolve and change and shift. And so like, if a thing is not working, doesn't mean it won't work forever.
Wow.
So I just feel like it's a reminder that we can always begin.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
I love that answer. It definitely kind of threw me. I think a lot of people interpret it.
How do they interpret it?
Well, there's so many different interpretations and I love all of them. There's never a right or a wrong answer, I say. But, I think at face value, you hear, or I ask somebody, ever forward, like, how do you move ever forward? It's just perpetual motion, And I've gotten some really great answers over the years of actually taking a pause and being still with it, and so that you can move forward. But this kind of opportunity you're hinting at of, I might not be moving forward right now, but just me introducing and going back to the beginning of the show, this aspect of curiosity. If I'm choosing curiosity, then I'm also choosing the opportunity, the potential opportunity to be moving forward whenever I want. Yeah. It's all up to me.
When the time's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Well, You've already said it a couple of times, but I'm assuming the website is. Where can we go to connect with
So-
you and learn more? I'll have it all in the show notes, the video description box for people, but where's the place to hang out with you the most right now?
So you can look up your human design at humandesignblueprint.com. We sell those hyper-personalized guides. The discount code is EverForward. We also do a course if you're just like, give me the juice, Erin. It's a really great place to learn all the things you need to know. And then I'm on Instagram at Erin Claire Jones and Human Design Blueprint. And the book is called How Do You Choose? A Human Design Guide to What's Best for You at Work, in Love, and in Life.
It's almost like she's been rattling that off for hours all day. Well, it's great to have you back. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you.
And I'll have all the information in the video description box, like I said, in the show notes. You guys definitely got to check it out. And the first episode, 304 or 340, again, linked for you down below. That was really kind of like the intro to Masterclass Human Design. So, well, great. Thank you so much.